If you can't see the $6,000 difference between these two cameras, then I was personally curious between these two cameras. And not only me, I actually got a lot of comments, and it was kind of cool because in my mind, again, I've been questioning how these two cameras would differ from each other. And it seems like a lot of you guys are intrigued with that same question. So guys, what cameras are we talking about? The new Leica EV1 and the Fujifilm XE5. And don't worry, I bought both of these cameras with my own money. So if you think there's any bias here, there is none. And if you still think so, enjoy the video. Totally different, but they kind of have the same vibe. There's an analogy. There's Johnny Depp and then there's Temu Johnny Depp. Totally different cameras. Obviously the Leica EV1 is a full frame camera. The XE5 is a crop sensor camera. I want to say the experiences are totally different, but they will kind of give you a similar vibe purely because you can see on the EV1, we have our shutter dial up here. On the XE5, we have our shutter dial up here. If you want to control your aperture with the manual focus lens, you control it by the lens. You control it by the lens on the EV1 as well. If you want to change your ISO, I have my rear dial set for the ISO. For the ISO on the EV1, it's right back here. So you can see very minimalistic designs. And yes, they harken back to film cameras. Obviously the Leica EV1 is very similar to the Leica MPs, Leica M6, like the rangefinders that have been around for almost a century now. This has the same design language behind it. The Fujifilm XE5 also is kind of aiming for that experience. I will say you're gonna get way better image quality out of the EV1 versus the XE5. But let's talk about the experience in hand. When you click the display button while you're looking through the viewfinder, you have your traditional modern settings all showing. But if I click the display button, next thing you know, you have this incredibly vintage retro SLR film camera look in there. We have a little exposure meter off the side. It reminds me of like my Nikon F1 or F3s and cameras I've owned in the past. And on the bottom, you have a very minimalistic layout and they're all in orange. So I'm in manual mode. It's showing my shutter speed. It's showing my aperture, my ISO, and the battery life. That's it. There's no other settings on there. So this really does film like a retro old film camera looking through this. When I go to my Leica EV1, I don't have film simulations on here. Granted, the Leica JPEG color profiles, it looks just fine, honestly, but it's not as fun as the Fuji. But the viewfinder looks 5 times bigger on the EV1. It feels huge. So it's weird because while this viewfinder is way more immersive and feels bigger and it feels like you could see more, the user experience on the XE5 feels a little bit more fresh. I wish I could blend these two cameras together because Fujifilm's software seems a little bit better than what Leica's providing us on this camera here. But again, the hardware on here is better, if that makes sense. So I really, really, really wished Leica innovated some unique, focusing methods on here. Even that, I think the only thing this thing needs is an updated algorithm for the focus peaking, because it's not exact. And that's kind of the beauty with this is being able to put M-mount lenses from over 100 years ago directly onto here, natively mount those lenses on here. And the sensors that Leica uses on this, they tune them up a little bit. I'm gonna give Jericho the mic because he's not super familiar with either of these cameras. And I wanna show him, we'll just get his response.
Ooh, I have not seen the old school thing Cam was talking about before. This is nice. I really enjoy the classic. I like the little dial on the side. Fujifilm always has that ability to give you a lot of that nostalgia, and having that retro like viewfinder really completes that look. Yeah. Forehead grease off of this thing before I review it. Yeah, the viewfinder is significant as far as size. The focus peaking is nice. I like the waveform. The screen quality and everything feels like snappy. But I like the old school look of the other one a lot better. I don't know, it's hard. I think this is better technically, but I think the other one inspires me a little bit more. Yeah, the other one it's much more fun to use. It's much more inspiring to use. Where this, I do feel like I'm picking up like a unit of a camera because it's so well made. It's also inspiring because I know that the files will be there more. This is a difference between having candy now or having a steak later. This tastes way better to eat or to shoot with right away because you're seeing that Fujifilm sim. You're getting that edit right away. and it's more fun to shoot through that vintage viewfinder, where this, I know it's a little bit of delayed gratification, but it's gonna be there. That's how I feel.
Let me just say right off the bat, I actually enjoy using the manual focus setup on the XE5 more than the EV1. Sorry guys, real quick. Speaking of manual focus, on her drive back home, Sedona had her head out the window and her ears are flopping around and everything. And I wish I was able to film it, but I have my EV1 in hand, so I quickly manual focus with the focus peaking and took the photograph of her. I actually threw that photograph into Artless's AI image and video tool set over here. Shout out to Artless for helping me with this video. Let's be honest guys, just how TV killed the radio and streaming killed TV. AI is here to stay. There's no getting around it. And so we have to learn how to stay ahead of it and how to utilize it. You know, even the drone shot at the beginning of the segment was actually another photo that I took on the EV1. I threw that image into Artless as well. And I did the image to video AI tool, just like the shot I did with Sedona. I used Sora 2 on it, since Sora 2 gives you more of a realistic, high quality physical realism. What's cool with Artless is with one subscription, you could basically use all the different AI engines that are out there instead of going to each of their websites and, you know, having to subscribe to all that. And all the music you guys have been hearing in this video is from Artless as well. All the sound effects, stock footage, that's the stuff I use the most. I will say, you know, I don't use AI to replace my creativity. I use it more in the times of things that I would already do, but I just use it to streamline and speed up the process. Again, it's all the things I used to do before by hand that would take me like a week. Now I just use AI to do it. And again, to me, I don't have a personal problem with using it that way. And obviously we can't control how other people are going to use it. But again, I'm very prideful on not using AI to replace my creativity or to do all the work for me. With that said, I'll have a link down in the description if you guys want to check out Artless. Again, their music library is just insane. So check that out and let's get back into the video. I'm not talking about autofocus lenses on this camera, because for me, when you pair a manual focus lens with a form factor like this, you get really close to that film experience without shooting film. But what's really unique about the XE5, the focus peaking is more precise than it is on the EV1. That's my biggest gripe with the EV1. It is usable, you can use it, it does work just fine, but it's not as precise as, you know, cameras that have come out in the past year or two. Fuji XE5, I have the Typock 28mm. It's a f1.4 lens. This is equivalent of like a 42mm. And then on the Leica EV1, I have their latest and greatest Summilux 35mm f1.4 FLE version 2. This is like one of the best lenses that you can get off of Leica right now. What's unique with this new EVF version of the M-mount body is if I wanted to, I could go find a 40mm lens now, where with the other Leicas, you don't have the frame lines inside of the rangefinder system for a 40mm lens. So that's what's unique about this new camera now. The focus peaking on here feels way more precise than it does on the Leica, which again is a bummer because of the price of this camera and how amazing this viewfinder is. I would really love for this focus peaking to not only be more precise, but a little bit more sharper, a little bit more, I guess the word would be coherent. 30% of the shots I've been taking on this, again, I'm still getting used to the system, aren't exactly in focus. It's a little front in focus or a little back focus. Where on this Fuji so far, I have even less experience with this camera so far, just because, you know, I've been doing a bunch of the Leica stuff. Overall, I feel like, yeah, I can even tell it's way easier to grab focus on this camera with this focus peaking. The thing with Leica cameras is they're made to be minimalistic experiences. So they're not meant to have all of these thrills behind them. But with the EV1 having an electronic viewfinder, I kind of expected them to do some similar features that they have in the Leica Q343. Those being Leica looks. We don't have Leica looks on here. The Leica looks are basically like Fujifilm's film sims. When it comes to Fujifilm, obviously, we all know there's film sims on here. And what's fun about the XE5, we have this little window up here. Traditionally on film cameras, when you had this window, it was for your film counter. So basically, as you take shots, it's telling you how many shots you have left or how many shots you've taken. On here, what Fujifilm did, this is how you change your film sims. Obviously, you can still go through the menus, you can set custom buttons, you can do all that. Or you could just set your favorites right to here. I kind of feel like they should have maybe done an LED window to where you just set your own and it just showed the film sims on there. That could have been even more cooler. But I do appreciate this. And again, Fujifilm knows what their role is in the industry. It is to harken back that nostalgia and that fun and that color memory, as they have now deemed it, to where, you know, they don't try to get the look of film, but they try to get the idea and the memory that we have of film, which is totally different than what film actually looks like, honestly. Those little tiny features really make this amazing. Now, where they start to kind of come together a little bit, you can see we have this little lever up here. You can customize this lever. Right now, I have mine set to, when I hit it, it goes to white balance. And I'm gonna hit it again, and then it goes into a digital crop. This will transition us into the Leica now. The Leica EV1, to the normal person, this will look like a film camera. So just how Fujifilm's aware of what their role is in the industry, I'm pretty confident Leica also knows that, you know, their role is the minimalistic, true photographer experience. I don't have all the extra custom dials on there. I don't have all the extra bells and whistles. And even the XE5 is still pretty simple. There's no exposure, compensation dial, or none of that. Leica's really good at giving you the bare necessities to be a photographer. What that does for my brain is it removes distractions. It removes the reminder that this is a digital camera, oddly. It puts you back into the seat of being a film shooter almost. So it's very weird, especially having the electronic viewfinder on here now. It's very unexpected, and it's a whole new world almost. You guys can see though, we also have a little film lever on this guy as well. Traditionally, on Leica cameras, this is for your frame markers inside of your rangefinder system. I'm gonna click over, and this is going to crop in, and this is basically letting me crop in so I could grab focus. And then if I click the other way, it turns on and off the focus peaking. All right, guys, it's time to do the image quality comparison. In order to make this fair, I'm going to put this same lens onto the Fuji as well. So it's going to crop in. So you guys are going to see the crop factor. So this is a 60 megapixel sensor, full frame sensor. I'm pretty sure it's the same sensor that's in the Sony A7R5. That doesn't mean it's the same exact sensor. The sensor division at Sony is totally separate from the cinema division, which is also separate from the alpha division. So when companies order sensors off of Sony, they put in their own customizations and they make their own tweaks, and they could do whatever they want to them. And Sony Alpha and the cinema line aren't supposed to know what those are. It's supposed to be all private. Who knows if it actually is? I don't know. From what I understand, the sensor glass on the front of the sensor is a little bit thinner than what's on traditional modern sensors now. And I guess there's like micro lenses on the sensor or something like that. So you get better color condition, you get better color fidelity or something. I don't know. All I know is every time I've adapted Leica lenses onto other cameras, they look softer than what they look like on here. The micro contrast really pops off when you pair this system together. So with all that said, let me take my image here and then we'll talk about the XE5. And I'm just gonna click my lever over here to make sure I'm getting as much in focus as possible. We're gonna shoot at f1.4, shutter 1/2000, ISO 64. I really do love the experience of this camera, but again, would be sick to have film sims on here. All right, now let's put this lens on the XE5 here. I'll put a link to the adapter I'm using on the Fujifilm. There's a million different adapters you can get. So I'll either link back to this one. I've had this one for a while though. But if I find a better one, I'll link back to that one. I'm going to try to link up the settings as best as possible. Here's a big difference. The lowest ISO you can get, native ISO, is 125. Where on the Leica EV1, it's ISO 64. So usually when a sensor can go lower in ISO, it's usually a sign that it's gonna have more dynamic range. That's just, for some reason, that's a character trait that comes with dynamic range. There's the same image, and you guys are gonna notice how much more cropped in this is. This is something that a lot of people don't realize. This is the big difference between full frame and APS-C sensors. When you shoot full frame, especially on a lens like this, you're gonna get a lot more of the characteristics of the lenses. But then when you put it on a crop sensor, you're cropping into the center of the lens. You're losing all of that beauty that comes with the lens on an actual full frame sensor. But with that, this is a 40 megapixel sensor. Even though that this is 40 and the EV1 60 megapixels, the fact that it's cropped, I don't care who you are, there's a difference. There's an image quality difference. The same people who argue, oh, the Fujifilm crop sensor is just good as full frame, will also say, oh, but the Fujifilm GFX cameras are better than full frame. It's like one can't be false and the other be true. They all have to be true, or they all have to be false. So one thing you guys are gonna notice on this simple comparison, Leica EV1, again, going back to what I was saying about the sensor, there's micro lenses on it and the sensor glass is thinner and yada, yada, yada. When you pair up M-mount lenses, you get an extra beautiful look out of it. It's really hard to explain, but I guess it's a combination of like micro contrast maybe and added sharpness without being digitally sharp. I really don't know how to explain it. The other thing you're gonna notice too though is when you go to a crop sensor, there's more noise. Imagine if we shot a low light image on both of these cameras and I had to crop into the sensor to match the 1.5x crop on here. When you crop into the sensor, you're cropping into the megapixels and you're cropping into the noise. That's the same shit that you're doing on this basically. So you're gonna get more noise out of this camera. So when it comes to like fun photography and if you're lighting your images and you have great light, the image quality on the Fujifilm cameras is amazing. But once you have to start pushing it and you're doing really contrasty scenes and you don't have lighting controlled around you, that's where these sensors start falling apart faster before it would a full frame camera and definitely before a medium format digital camera. Apologies I didn't do a more epic video with epic shots on here. The viewfinder on the XE5 feels incredibly tiny. You know, it feels like Trump's hands almost. Anytime when I'm getting a little burnt out photography, when I pick up a Fujifilm camera, the film sims like wake up my brain every single time. So it really is a special, unique feature that Fujifilm has. With all that said, once you pick this guy up and you put your eye up to this giant freaking electronic viewfinder, it's night and day. It's Magnum size, guys. It's huge. The Leica standard colors and Hasselblad standard colors are some of the best like non-film sims and creative profiles I've ever used. They're like simple, but there's something poppy about them that feels great. So when it comes down to making the decision between these two cameras, obviously if budget is a factor for you, it's a clear choice. The EV1 is definitely a way better experience in my opinion, quality wise, and it's full frame. And I could go and shoot a portrait that I know I'm going to print and I would make it like the best portrait I've ever made. I would choose the EV1 to do that, not the XE5. But obviously if you're on a budget and you want a similar vibe, the XE5 can kind of get you close to it, especially when you start adapting lenses to it. It doesn't have to be an expensive Leica lens. It could be a vintage lens. I have cheaper vintage lenses that I paid $300 to $500 for, and they're gonna look great on the XE5. But again, it is a crop sensor. You're gonna have a little bit more noise on there. The files don't feel as big and as sharp and clean. You're gonna have people in the comments of this video saying, oh, I've done this with the Fuji. I've done a million things with the Fujifilm files as well. But if you do the same things with a full frame file, I don't care what camera it comes from, it's gonna be way easier and the results are gonna be way better, in my opinion. You guys tell me down in the comments, what would you pick? If money wasn't a factor, what would you pick?